I knew Paul Clay's famous line, taking a line for a walk, but I didn't really know what to do with that line. But maybe 5 years ago, I thought, I'm going to start doing this, and I found that I had a subject. I like absurdities. The picture that's chosen for the exhibition isn't absurd. It's about my pain, but the pleasure of my drawings comes from my sense of the absurdity of everyday life. Well, that particular image, I think, is quite shocking. What is phantom limb pain anyway? Nobody knows what it is. They can't imagine it, just a sort of tingling of the missing limb. Well, what is it then? Oh, it's very sharp, or it's burning. Oh yeah, I understand. No, they don't. So I wanted to give a graphic representation of pain and how it rips you apart and cloaks you.
I've been doing art for as long as I can remember. Like always, I've been observing things and trying to recreate them. This one is about trying to paint how it feels to be having a bad migraine experience and trying to combine the busyness of a feeling with the absolute void of thought, which I find is something unique to migraines, and that's why I did a whole series on them. I used black acrylic paint and sunblood because there seems to be no easier way of showing pain. I think I am an artist. I wouldn't have the insight that I have without the slightly different wiring that I have. I go into a sort of trance of concentration. It's something that just occupies every part of my head and nothing else does that. I've been given a way of seeing the world that I'm told is unusual. Every time I successfully communicate like just a tiny bit of that, it's the best feeling in the world. I see things so vibrantly that I can't understand why everyone doesn't see it that way, and I want to show people.
I've always done two things, and that's paint and dance, and they've been constant since childhood. It's kind of like my purpose. It's like breathing for me. It's almost like a better voice for me than words in a lot of ways. The painting is much more psychological. When I was under home treatment, I was really bad. It's been a life, I think art has saved my life. I am very spontaneous. I like nothing more than just like going, ooh, and seeing what things do. I've used cotton buds and dental floss to create sculptures. Well, I was doing a piece of performance based on the idea of the Back of Beyond. The picture came about then because I was thinking about that feeling of there's a sense of isolation and then a sense of expanse around you, and I often draw me as a cell because, you know, they're the building blocks of all of us for everything. So it was just like this cell floating in like a deep red expanse, a kind of psychological Back of the Beyond. There's ink, there's charcoal, there's paint, there's chalk, there's pencil crayon, there's a graphite stick. And that's just in that, I mean, you wouldn't look at it and think it had that many mediums in it. It does. It's a weird little image that actually is quite powerful, even though there's not a proficiency or a technique going on there, but it works.
So I've done this out. I've decorated it with patterns and yellows on there.
Why an owl?
Because it makes a noise.
What noise?
Woo-hoo. I decorated it. I used the straws to add them to its colour.
Who's that picture of?
Sean Bradley. Took me 10 hours to make this thing. I've just added the white straws and snipped them in half. And I also done the eyes and the lips. And I've also done some patterns up there. Up there, red, blue, red, blue, red, blue, red, blue. Yep. I like doing art, using chalk, using colouring pencils, pens, computering, or I play basketball because I'm a great basketball player. It looks good. It looks really good.
It does.
Yeah, it does look good.
At the moment, the key subject is my childhood. So I grew up on the Pepys estate in Deptford, and I lived on that estate for 8 years with my family until it kind of got too much and we had to move off. It was very rough. Kind of culminated in someone throwing a milk bottle at my mum. But I think the aesthetic of it as well, because you know what I remember from my childhood were these very kind of omnipresent towel blocks, which were totally out of scale. They were very daunting and imposing. So this is where I've just buttered the surface and then drawn in the architecture of the Pepys with a pencil. And so what I want to do with this is I'm going to clad it with some translucent polycarbonate. So I'm going to make a kind of a sleeve or a case. So I've got a yellow one, I've got a magenta one there, and there's a red one knocking around, so I think it's next door actually. So now, aside from kind of the childhood experiences, I'm starting to weave in a lot of historical narrative into the paintings. So abattoir, on the site of the Pepys estate, aside from the naval dockyard, there was also a huge cattle market. What that painting really is a kind of a fusion of the gangs of old who worked there, you know, who used to work on the docks there, and the gangs of today. And I'm in that painting as well, but you know, so those three things are kind of fused together. The river, the artery of London, is actually kind of like, you know, there's references and there's metaphors for my arteries because I grew up on the river.
Well, I like doing art, doing painting, drawings, and like drawing portraits. And I like drawing women rather than men. Well, I prefer women to men actually, yes. Three artist first members, Carol, so Joe and Tina. Oh, and that's Kathy Stewart by me, yes. Kate Thomas by me, yes. Oh, no date on that one. Oh, Queen Elizabeth II by Peter Sutton, 36. Yeah, we had a trip to London to go to the National Portrait, go and look at the exhibition, other things, yes. So I copied it from a photograph, that one. They're done by acrylics, these. Yeah, sometimes, and they use those like water pencils and sort of water them in, yes. Yeah, they enjoy it, yeah. Makes me feel happy.
My inspirations are always changing. I like philosophy surrounding sort of existential ideas and things like that. I've always been creative. My mum actually bought me painted by numbers as a kid, and it kind of like kept me quiet. We had a next door neighbour who was an art teacher, and I just had lessons from her. I've also sort of naturally gravitated towards it because I'm dyslexic and things like that, and I've always excelled at art, but not so much in like academic subjects and things. So it's a different kind of style that I went for in the painting. Last year I was using rippled glass as a sort of metaphor for sort of distorting reality and what we see. It's a distortion in this. So it's sort of, that's the initial influence. I came up with some interesting sort of self-portraits. It was just about colour, being bold and sort of about emotional response. So it's about the imagination playing tricks on you and thinking things that are real when they're not. So the pink rain, it could be a hand swearing or it could be a bottle of alcohol. So it's about changing perception through drink and perceiving in a different way, or trying to escape, basically.
A lot of my portraits are quite cheerful. I find looking at cheerful faces and something happy actually makes me feel better. I also find working with bright colours, that seems to lift my mood as well. This is an actor called Walter Matthau. He's an actor that I really like watching. He's got quite a few lines on his face, so it probably took a bit longer. And with the abstract, it's just doing something completely different from the portraiture. Something a lot more freer, just playing about with colours and just seeing what happens, really. I was going through a bit of a bad patch at the time and was having trouble with anxiety and depression, and sort of shredded nerves basically sort of represents that in a way. I see certain things and then I've had somebody else look at that particular piece of work and they've seen something completely different. I think actually when I started that piece of work, if I remember, there was nowhere near as many marks on there in colour, and I actually disliked the piece of work, and I just thought, well, just keep going. And it just ended up being something completely different from what I originally did. I've used chalk pastels, oil pastels, graphite, and actually the main thing I've actually used are my hands, basically smudging all the different things together and just seeing what happens. It's like there's a battle going on between the colours and the black, and which is like what I feel at times with dealing with depression.
I've always just sort of been compelled to make art, and I've always been very interested in it, and I find it relaxes me. Usually with doodles, it will just sort of start itself sort of thing. I'll just make art. I'll just sort of use materials and just sort of use things and make, and then from that an idea will come usually, or I'll think that part of that doodle looks a bit like that, and then it will just carry on, and it's sort of like, so I never really plan a lot, I don't think, with my drawing. It just kind of like follows its own sort of thing. One of my inspirations and sort of like big influences on my art is Alex Gray, and he's a visionary artist from America, and I've always really liked his work. I think he does a lot of stuff to do with like chakras and spiritual beliefs and stuff, because like a lot of the like spiritual and stuff, like, I don't quite get that. Like, I appreciate it and I want to understand it, but like I ain't quite there yet. I only sort of really make when I'm in the right mood, sort of thing, which is why sometimes it takes me years to make sort of pieces of art, and I've got to be in the right frame of mind for it. And sometimes I'm not, which is why it takes a while. Well, like all the writing on the back was just like a list of, I think it was just a jobs list that I did for like the week, and I think you can see it's like, I've written on there like, print out the jester, because I was like doing a jester which was all made of patterns, get like ×6 lino stripes cut, continue a 3-piece, and finish like, and then I can't read the rest of it because it's like part of his teeth. And I think what happened, it went down there, and I just sort of started messing around with biro, and then realised, oh, that looks like a hill, and then made that into a face, and it just sort of like flowed on from it. It's like I didn't plan any of it, it just was a doodle that ended up with a pattern fella eating a hill. It's like just always how it goes.
There are pictures of me as a toddler covered in paint. I stopped for a long time and started again. It was sort of recommended as a vaguely therapeutic thing. I'd thought for ages that I was no good because I dropped out of A-level art and took it up again as a hobby, because if you're doing something as a hobby, it's fun. So now I sort of want to do it as the thing I want to do with my life. And without teachers and pressure in school, it's really quite easy to learn and practice and get better. My
passions are for overlooked beauty, because people miss things if they're told they're ugly, and showing the things that get ignored. This is largely about the dubious delights of borderline personality disorder, but it's also about building on the past, learning to be yourself, living with the scars and remains of who you've been. It's a doll that I've had since I was a kid, which I took apart and put back together again, and some of the jewellery I've also had since I was a kid. I would just like them to look at it, and particularly to be a little more aware that sometimes you can't see what's wrong with somebody. Guardian is supposed to, I can't quite remember the terms, but guardian is supposed to be an aspect of borderline personality disorder, and the thing that I think of as a guardian is lion, because I like lions and because they're often used as temple guardians. Dreams and surrealism are incredibly inspiring to me. My favourite artist is probably Leonora Carrington. She mixes surrealism with a much stronger emphasis on folklore and other stuff that I'm really fascinated by. There's a way in which every time I finish something I feel like I'm scoring points against people I've had problems with in the past. I'd call them bullies, they might dispute that. Yeah, when anybody likes it I feel like I've won.
What things inspire you when you make
Nature, around here, being by the sea, it's the countryside and the beach and the coastline is inspiring. The light around here is nice. That was an hallucination I had, like, that in Taunton in 1995, and I remembered it slowly through time. I've done hundreds of copies of it, and to get it right, and that's about as best as I got it. Like, this hallucination was from heaven. Like, Genesis chapter 1 verse 2 says, "And God's active spirit travelled to and through over the watery depths." Like, so it was on the surface of the deep, like, and it was on a surfboard. I think that is God. Like, I think it's a picture of God that He's given me to like as a gift. Like glass beads, yeah. They come from the beach. Like they're ground down by the sea. Like, there's a bit of coral there. These are the sort of things that buy me, like, that get my juices flowing. Like, it started off as 2 sections with just these rounds. I was finding bits on the street, bits of plastic and bits of I don't know what they were. Like, I was baffled by them, so I started collecting them. I put these blue things here, and someone said it looked like a nuclear power station. And I thought, oh, that's a good idea. Like, I'll make it into a nuclear sort of thing. Like, the story is these are power stations, and it's like a barren land. There's been a nuclear war, and there's snow on the ground, and this is supposed to be a teleport machine. There's a person there and a robot there, and an explosion here, and there's a lot going on. Like, spacecraft there, and it's like supposed to be a picture of the future. Like, sort of how it would be if a nuclear bomb went off, and what a mess there'd be. Like, I call it critical mass. It's like an it's evolved. Like, it's a natural evolutionary sort of thing. Like, it's built up slowly. Like, bits have been moved around and shifted, and it's just evolved itself, like, almost. I was quite happy with it. Like, a friend of mine said it was like something I'd not done before. Like, you know, he'd never seen anything like it before, so I was quite happy with it.
I was surfing alone in the Pacific Ocean in Mexico, and I got hit by a set of very big waves and had a near-death experience. And I guess it was during that time alone that I realized I could make my work directly in the ocean instead of working in a studio. And I've been traveling around the world when I can, making my work in the ocean. And I spend a lot of time in Cornwall in the Atlantic Ocean. And over the last several years, I've been working in painting and drawing specifically and occasionally work with video as well and sculpture. The selected artwork that I have in the show is one that I made in Cornwall in the Atlantic Ocean. The plywood enabled me to have that kind of surface, that buoyant platform, if you like, to paint upon. The media that I chose is simply oil paint together with a dinosaur bone. And so I was really intrigued and curious about taking this inanimate bone fragment and animating it once again.
Sometimes I'll get something in my head and I think, right, I'm going to paint that, and it turns out absolutely nothing like it. That's just the base. And then once the paint goes on, I see things in the paint and then it changes and just grows. To be honest, I only really name them if I know. It's mainly other people saying, well, what are you going to call it? That is my wish, is the wish pond, and it always has been. It's just, you know, in my head, the wish pond. Well, that actually was very, very basic. All it was like very thin lines and circles. Not so much balls, circles that like had circles in, you know, very thin. And it was just, and I quite liked it like that. But then I just kept seeing different things. And then it just grew into that. I mean, it did take quite a few years on and off, you know, you just sort of carried it around and it just grew into that. I don't know really where they all come from. I like the confusion sometimes on people's faces, like when they're looking at that and they're thinking, why? But I think with my paints, they actually make people think. I don't know what about, but they stand there for a long time, like looking at them, and then they'll go away and come back, like. So I don't know what they're thinking, but if they're making them think something. There's some that need rounding off, but I think I'm just not going to touch it again. I refuse. When that's finished, all my wishes are going to come true, because I've had that many wishes while I've been painting it, and they're all there. I'm very dramatic sometimes.
I suddenly began to appreciate that you could just make art for its own sake. It didn't have to be saleable, it didn't have to be for anybody. It was purely, you know, the creative experience and doing it for yourself. So that was my kind of ideal in a way. I'd make art for myself, and if anybody liked it, wanted to exhibit it, that's great, you know. I think over the years I've developed a sense of composition, and I love line, and there are certain colours which appeal to me, so I applied them. You know, I applied them there, and I like scratching. You know, I scratched in it, you know, that kind of thing. And then when it was selected, I was absolutely delighted, and I thought I've got to give it a title. So I looked at it, and in a way, it's got a figurative element, and I call them helpers. So that's what I call them, was helpers, mysterious beings. And that's it, really. If I could paint everyday scenes successfully and make a living at it, I'd be doing that, but I can't. I've tried, you know. I think I've got to make some money and paint some boats, you know, and it just doesn't work. So I come back to what I'm doing, because there might not be any money in it. I might not exhibit it, but it seems to be. It's got a kind of an integrity and a kind of honesty in doing that, you know.
Obviously in prison you don't have photographs, so there's no real way of recording anything visually, and I wanted a way of remembering some of the people, so I started to sketch. And a friend of mine saw the drawings and said, they're right, why don't you do an art course? And this was at Dartmoor prison. And they had a 2-week art course, basic skills, which I signed up to. On the act is the euphemism, I suppose, or it's a prison term that applies to anyone who's been deemed a risk to themselves. And it signifies that the prison system has an extra duty of care in order to try and prevent that prisoner from self-harming. However, in my experience, in the 3 prisons that I've been in, that generally involves all of their possessions being taken away in case they harm themselves with their possessions. It means they can't share a cell, so they're even more isolated. And sometimes it involves the loss of phone calls, the loss of visits, try and stop these people from self-harming. Obviously, anyone with a conscience knows that that doesn't work. The other thing about the painting is that it's the prisoner is gagged, and thankfully I've never personally had experience of self-harm, but I knew people inside who were self-harmers, and they talked to me about it's their way of expressing. No one cares what they say. You know, there's that gag in place, I suppose.
So I live on the edge of Dartmoor, and the landscape's always inspired me, so that's kind of what I base my work on. So I do a lot of drawing out on the moor and then come back to my little cubby hole here and start sort of painting from my drawings. But by the time the painting's finished, it's normally nothing like the drawing, because I get quite into the process itself of just painting, and so that sort of then takes it on a tangent of its own. Making art makes me feel like I'm connected to things that are much bigger. It's a very rooting, grounding kind of thing, I think, working specifically with the landscape. Kappa was the name of quite a famous Aboriginal artist. And he was one of the first Aboriginal artists to incorporate that whole mix of subjective and objective view on one piece of art. And when I was doing that painting, that was in my mind as well, because I was mixing the above view and the subjective view as well. I guess in some ways it was a little bit of a tribute to him, really. Yeah.
All these are inspired by Marvel Comics. I've got various characters. I've made over 40 of my own cards, so I'm not short of ideas. Pencil first, and then I've got some sort of pen and ink, but you can go over the pencil and rub away the pencil. Also help if you've got decent felt tip pens. I've got an ingenious way of keeping them in a sock, because it doesn't get muddled up with all the pens which have faded or running out, because you can't really tell them apart, the new ones to the old ones. I feel quite satisfied by the end product. So this one, for instance, this one's probably taken me at least 3 or 4 hours to complete, but I wouldn't do just one block, 3 or 4. I'd spend maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours at a time on it. It relaxes me tremendously, and I just quite enjoy just the creation of it all, sort of thing, because there is no boundaries. If you've got all your pens and your inks and stuff, there is no boundary. I hope they get inspired, sort of thing. Look at it and think, oh, I'll get myself some pens and I'll get some ink and stuff, and I'll have a go myself. So.
As a child, I spent time staying at my grandparents' home in a small Wiltshire village called Easton Grey. The tiny village was beautiful. It had an old bridge over the River Avon, and I used to sketch the cottages, old black and white photos that my nan had. It fed my creative mind, I guess. I later studied fashion and textiles at Salisbury, did work as an art therapist for learning disability children and adults, before eventually working for a family building business, and had a big break from doing any artwork. I started a family, enjoyed doing messy art with my kids, but I hadn't done any work of my own for a long time. A few years ago, I hit a spell of depression and anxiety. I felt the need to be creative again, so I looked for an art group to join and found Zap Arts, a group in Poole for people with mental health issues. It has been a lifesaver. I started to sketch again, to explore work with clay and photography. I decided to take up a part-time college course, and I am enjoying learning new skills again. When I am being creative, my anxiety reduces. I feel calmer. Learning new skills gives me a challenge and a sense of achievement. Hopefully, after seeing this exhibition, other people may become interested in taking up art or revisiting their creative side. It may help others to reduce anxiety, depression, and bring some calm into their lives too.
I started drawing in the 80s, and I tried to apply for art colleges but was turned down. By chance, my work made it onto the first recycled card range for Athena, and some of my cartoons were used for a place that I used to work at. After one thing and another, though, I did drift away from making art altogether. I love animals and nature and usually do something along those lines. Hounds and horses tend to be included in quite a bit of my work. I make figures now. I prefer 3D work. On the odd occasion I have done pictures, but I do prefer 3D. Art occupies my mind. I have a problem with short-term memory, and making things doesn't require that much grey matter, but I still write lists of what to do next. Getting work completed is pleasing, though I am never really fully content with the results. I would like viewers of my work just to think of humour, hopefully. Nothing seems so dark in this world if you can chuckle away at it.